won't react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same to conviction in a fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, pulling the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home, begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying age in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, pulling the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, oh, oh,
Hi, my name is Seth Andrews, and this is End Time.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nick Suter, and this is In Time. With me tonight is 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴,
I'm doing outstanding, enjoying the not so sunny and much cooler and more damp weather of LA.
At least you're there safely. So, well, it sounds like I'm getting an echo, though I'm not sure. No, it's not an echo. Okay. So, I'm talking to Kafir, and I've been mispronouncing his name, which is very difficult for, I think, an American to pronounce. And I was going to point out I failed to do this, which is I've been mispronouncing your name for years because it's the hard I in 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐿𝐴, and I don't know why my brain just doesn't do that. So maybe tonight I will be able to pronounce people's names. Before we bring Kfir out, I did want to say So about 2 hours ago, and this is on our Discord, so come on in, and we've been keeping up with all of the things Trump has been doing. It has been a genuine delight to watch and see how the people who volunteer at In Time have been just keeping up with everything. It's absolutely insane. It's been a lot of work. But he has offered, I think it's 7 months paid leave for basically most or any federal employee who resigns. They get pay all the way up through September 20th. They have to do this by February 7th, I believe, is the date. The reason he's doing this is because he's about to fire as many as he can, and he thinks it's going to be very, very difficult and or challenged in the courts. But if you've quit, well then. So that's a huge payout. But it's reached a point where people are having a hard time understanding what Trump is doing and why, and can't just the sort of regular. We can't keep up with the flood of information, especially with just one regular show. So we will be adding another show. It will probably be floating based on need. But the other thing we're going to do is try to break up everything he's done into different sections. What has he done regarding immigration? What's he done regarding the workforce in the U.S.? What's he doing regarding tariffs and other countries? And some of these dovetail with each other, but I think that's the easiest way to try to break it up. What is his overall strategy? Which there does appear to be one, which is basically throw as much spaghetti at the wall, whatever sticks, claim credit for, whatever doesn't stick, pick it up and throw it at a different wall and see if it sticks there. And believe it or not, that really is a strategy. Okay, people come to him and say, okay, here's what we're trying to do. And he says, okay, do it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. He doesn't really care. If it works, great. If not, he says, well, we'll try it this way. And if that doesn't work, abandons it, unlike previous presidencies that have tried to have a cornerstone that they try to advance. He doesn't care. He's just throwing everything. So we're going to start covering that, and hopefully in a way that will be easy for people to understand, where they can watch the show and say, okay, this makes some sense of what appears to be utter chaos. And we're going to end up discussing it tonight anyway. But without further ado, let's get on to the show's topic and bring out tonight's guest, Kafir. Kafir, how are you?
Oh, I certainly am. I'm doing fine. Thank you. It's very good to be back here.
Well, we're very glad to have you back. It's been a dramatic change. So last we had you on, there was a considerable amount of fighting. There was a considerable amount of protests.
Yes, there was the Iran attacks back then. That's what spurred on the whole thing.
Yep, and we could actually hear the explosions while talking to you. You pointed out that you had you actually could be in a bunker, but of course there were no bunkers in Gaza or the West, or Lebanon. So it was a significant difference for Palestinians and Israelis. The war was very lopsided.
Very much.
So now you're back on the heels of a multi-tiered peace agreement, and I think we're going to have to talk about those tiers. It looks like the peace agreement is holding. What can you tell us about that agreement?
There's quite a lot of dimensions to it. As far as the terms themselves, it really is quite simple. It's been a hostage exchange, of course. Many Palestinian prisoners have been exchanged in return for the Israeli hostages. Differing amounts for different people. If I remember right, it was 40 prisoners for each of the female soldiers and 20 for each of the male ones, or something along those lines. Ultimately, it is not as consequential as the fact that, first of all, there are still 70 people who remain hostages, both alive and dead. There are still 70 hostages. And second of all, there are still many Palestinians who have been unjustly imprisoned and are still being held in Israeli prisons, oftentimes without bail, cause, trial, or anything of the sort. The peace treaty itself, Israel can do no military actions within Palestinian territories. Troops have been withdrawn. It's a standard affair. Meanwhile, there have already been declarations by the current commander-at-arms of the IDF that though this deal is painful to bear, they still hold they are still holding their plans to resume such attacks within Gaza. Several attacks have also happened within the West Bank territories as well.
Yeah.
I do believe that perhaps I should give for some first-timers here some context on myself. I am Kfir. I was a former combatant in the IDF for 2 years and 8 months in combat engineering, served in several active areas. Despite being an Israeli and being born in a settlement in the West Bank, I grew up in Kenya. I have some past as a political activist, and I am currently a student of archaeology and history.
Thank you for that. I think it's critically important. Many Israelis have been protesting for a very long time. Americans have been sort of mistaking the protests as a get rid of Netanyahu. I think nobody would have objected per se because he's not particularly popular. But the protests were actually to get the hostages back. Now that the hostages are starting to come back, is the feeling that for the average Israeli person is the feeling that they want to see the war continue? I mean, if the cabinet. Members of the cabinet are saying, well, unfortunately, we have to wait. Who really wants to continue this and why?
It's polarizing in truth. As someone who helped organize many of those protests, I can say that the protests themselves are also very nuanced. I don't believe there was a single person who went to those protests and wanted to see Netanyahu there. There are protesters who go out every day to demand the hostages back, and they all put the weight of the blame on Netanyahu's shoulder, and justly so. The true political point of disagreement is that many of those protesters think that the bad right should be replaced with good right, while others are calling for a new, more leftist government. There was a policy of trying to limit, of course, political messaging during some of the protests, as the main objective was to bring back the hostages. Of the people who actually went out and those who vastly care and those who really put a lot of stake within the hostages, there are people who go out each day with a piece of masking tape with the number of days they've been held behind lines, people who go out every day with signs and water to stand there until the evening. This is not a victory. There's still... Not only has it been, over 420 days now, I believe, right? Nearly 430.
Yeah. About a year and a half, I think.
15 months. 15 months for a treaty that could have been signed well over a year ago. It could have been signed in the first month of the war, in the first few weeks of the war. All this time later, and there are still 70 held behind enemy lines. I recently read an article from one of the girls who came back, and she said, even if I would have been brought back a single week sooner, it would have saved me so much pain. Among the Israeli public itself, this is, of course, seen as a major victory. Other people are seeing it as a very polarizing, painful thing because so many quote unquote terrorists have been released. Others believe that the hostages should never have been released at all. It's a big mess. I would like to believe that the vast majority are happy that hostages were released, but are still aware that this is in no way a victory when there are still 70 people still held. As for Netanyahu, the people who are still happy with his government are a dwindling number.
The excuse me. So how are people responding to those ratios? So, for example, I think at one point, I think for one civilian woman, it was she was the most recent one released. We'll get to the issue with we'll get to that in a minute. But the most recent, the last female civilian released was 50 Palestinians. For her, numbers are like 1,000 Palestinians are coming out, and however many hostages being released by Hamas. How is that imbalance working out? And let me rephrase that. How is that being perceived by people? And just to point out now, some of these, it seems to me that, as I understand it, Israel is reasonably indiscriminate. So the people the Palestinians in Israeli prison, some of them are there for murder, for deliberately, going out and killing people and doing all sorts of terrible things. And some of them are there for throwing rocks in protest, or even just standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they're all lumped in together. Is that the correct understanding?
Yes. Israel has done something that is actually very smart. See, let me give you a example. There was an Israeli man called Goldberg who went out, shot up a mosque, and killed, I believe, 40 people. I believe I mentioned him in the previous interview. He is a mass murderer, but he is not a terrorist as far as Israel is concerned. On the contrary, every Palestinian, whether these motivations are related to their Palestinian identity or not, whether they threw some rocks or genuinely tried to assault people, and whether they just posted some things on social media, and even if not, are all labeled as terrorists, which makes it far, far easier to discriminate against them. A lot of the Palestinians are held up without reason, because Israel has decided that it can hold any Palestinian on the basis of suspicion alone, with no reason and no time limit. So a lot of them have been held without trial, with no reason, and without weeding them out from the actual killers. There were two actual terrorists that Hamas had tried to sort of slap onto the end of the deal, as far as I understood it, at least, that were denied. But majorly, this is seen as standard. The exact same thing happened in the 𝐒𝐲𝐜𝐴 Shalit deal, in which I believe 1,000 quote-unquote terrorists were also let free in exchange for 𝐒𝐲𝐜𝐴 Shalit, if anyone is aware about that history. In general, it's seen as it usually is. People are sour and bitter over it because, oh no, so many of these apparently terrible people have been released. People are happy that the people are home. Israelis aren't encouraged to think too deeply about things such as this.
Xander, whenever you've got a minute, if you could check your DMs. I'm sorry, please continue.
Yes, that's the best I can do right now. Israelis don't commonly think deeply about it. Even those that do, there is a general attempt to try and avoid too much political discourse, because you never know on which side of the coin you're trying to land. It's even happened to me at work, people asking me what my political orientation is. Of course, I refuse to answer because I represent the company and I refuse to get fired for my political opinions. Uh, but it is a big mess, but it's generally seen as standard. It's important to remember that Hamas did the attack with an objective. They didn't attack for the sake of it. They did it with the direct objective of taking hostages in order to exchange them for the many Palestinian prisoners. This is why peace deals were offered from day one and from moment one, and one of the reasons that the Netanyahu government is so heavily critiqued in the current time.
I think I glossed over, and I do want to get back to Netanyahu, but since we're here, let's talk about, and then I'll pass it off to 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫. I have just one more question, which is, did I hear this right? I heard that essentially, like when Hamas was releasing these hostages, some of them would actually go and hug the members of Hamas. Hamas gave them like little parting like gifts and stuff like, and all of this has been captured, and that this effect has actually been quite profound on Netanyahu and the government. Can you tell us more about that?
And honestly, that one a bit less so. I actually try to avoid the news too much. With the recent news cycle and how propagandized Israeli news is, I do try to avoid it. But I am not at all surprised. Even besides Stockholm syndrome, not everyone is as terrible as the news makes it out to seem, and criticism of the Netanyahu government have been flying out for ages. If I remember right, one of the most early on thing that had happened was Netanyahu tried to visit the hospital to visit some soldiers, and they refused to see him. Because he was responsible for them getting hurt in the first place. I am not surprised. If anything, it's actually very well documented that the Hamas and Hezbollah have incredible knowledge about Israeli soldiers, and would commonly, as a method of taunting, hang up balloons with their names on their birthdays behind enemy lines. Whether that was actual taunting or not, with this context, that is beyond me.
But they do have they are experienced in generating positive PR, which seems to have had an impact here, and may have led to Netanyahu.
Hamas PR is well known for being immensely good. It was part of my training to know that. We were commonly and often warned that every single thing we do will be photographed and recorded. Any failure of an Israeli soldier will go up on social media as, look how horribly trained and ridiculous these soldiers are. Any act that is seen as too extreme against a Palestinian person will go up as, look at how terrible and evil these Israelis are. Any act of the Palestinians getting a quote-unquote win on Israeli soldiers, or defeating them in battle, shooting them, or otherwise, will go up on social media as, look how amazing we are as this revolutionary force. There is a well-known tradition of Hamas soldiers shooting in the direction of military bases and photographing themselves, posting it on social media, and these shootings only being discovered via those posts. Their PR has always been very, very, very good. In recent times, however, there is a noticeable pushback, at least from Palestinians, as far as I know. At least, the Hamas is a lot less popular than it used to be among Palestinians, as many do blame them for the destruction, death, and loss of life that has happened in Gaza over the past year and a half, or year and 3 months.
All right, thank you. Is entering any thoughts?
So how did the agreement end up coming about?
Oh, that is very interesting to actually discuss. So the agreement has been it's very sad to say this. The agreement has been a hot point of contention within the government for many, many, many months now. It was very obvious that the right-winged party did not want to make an agreement because they would grow significantly weaker in times of peace. Meanwhile, the voice of the people has been growing stronger and stronger and stronger as military activities had failed to bring out any results. Each operation would bring back maybe 2 or 3 people at most if they weren't dead, and if there were people to bring back at all. The main proponents against the deal were Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Both had sworn to leave the government the moment the deal would be signed. Netanyahu would therefore be unable to sign the deal, as without their parties, he would lose his majority and the government would fall apart and we would have to hold re-elections. He knows he is very unlikely to win re-elections. This deal finally happened via a policy trade between Ben-Gvir and Netanyahu. During this whole time, Israel is not a big country. This is no surprise for everyone. Israel is not a big country. We don't have the highest population density, and there is a finite amount of soldiers. In the past few years, even there has been a marked decrease of both recruitments overall, and especially recruitments into combatant places. It's very... staffing is definitely a problem. The majority of Israeli soldiers are reserve staffs. Some people have been in reserves for like a year now, which by that point, can you even call it reserves? Because of that, there has been an attempt to recruit a lot of the populations that usually avoid recruitment, among them being the religious communities who avoid recruitment on religious grounds, which I do find highly ironic, as a lot of them are the largest proponents of these actions and this war and propaganda against Hamas. I feel like I should fix that. Not propaganda against Hamas, propaganda against Palestinians. So this was also part of a policy trade with Smotrich's party, the religious Zionists, to try and lessen this new law that is coming into effect in the close months, and try to limit its scope of recruiting religious soldiers and people who would usually not be recruited on religious grounds. So in effect, this trade deal came into being across several regions. First of all, soldiers are beginning to dry up. The cannon fodder does need to be built up again. There needs to be a bit of rest. Public outcry perhaps has finally managed to maybe get through their thick heads, though I am unsure about that as a true factor. There is a policy trade between the Netanyahu government and the Smotrich's party. Let's be more lenient on recruiting the religious communities, and he won't leave the government when the treaty will be signed. And the biggest factor, I believe, is that it is very hard to continue waging a forever war on a very small piece of land. At some point, there is just not a lot of land left to scorch.
Let me.
Do you think that it's going?
Please, Andrew.
Do you think that it's going to hold together through the end, or do you think that it's going to end up falling apart?
I believe that Hamas is, at the very least, unwilling to continue conflicts for very much longer. Public perception of them has gone down significantly. There have been tens of thousands of casualties so far in Gaza. There are nearly no bases of operations left there. It's gotten so bad that Israel has started to do military operations, well, wider than before. They already did military operations in those areas, but have begun to expand military operations within Lebanon and the West Bank, which led to the peace treaty with Lebanon. From the Israeli side, there is a distinct will to continue this war. The commander at arms of the IDF has stated a willingness to continue these attacks and this conflict. I believe that the treaty will hold for maybe a month or 2 or 3 more, and not more than that. Another thing to consider is that the Trump administration is making no efforts to try and mediate or stop or weigh in on this, and has instead been more encouraging of the genocide than the Biden administration.
I was going to ask if you had heard some of the recent comments by Trump, and anymore, I never know whether I should take what he says seriously or not, but it seemed that he was suggesting that he would be in favor of, or at least quasi-supportive of, Israel simply removing all of the Palestinians from the area and simply shipping them out to other countries someplace else and taking over the entire area. Do you think that that's a viable fear of something like that may happen?
I don't feel something like that could happen, but I do know that it is actively being thought of. One of the most harrowing thing I saw early into the conflict was a drawn-up plan for a completely annexed Gaza, in which a large majority of the area was turned into a memorial park for those who died during the October 7th attack, and several settlements would have been placed within Gazan territories, while the area the Palestinians could actually inhabit were made even smaller than before, turning this open-aired prison into even worse of a ghetto, for lack of a better word. I don't feel there is a better word. It is a ghetto. And I say this as the grandson of a Holocaust survivor. Another thing to consider is about Trump's own interests. Trump and Netanyahu have a very strong and well-documented relationship, to the point that there is even a Trump Heights in the Golan, which is contested territory.
That's oh wow, okay.
Yes, you can search it up on Wikipedia.
Oh, okay, wow. I knew they were close, but
yes, as a gift to Trump during his original 2016 presidency, a Trump Heights was established in the contended territory of the Golan region. Which is something I would rather not get into here, because the Golan region is itself a very complicated matter. As for Trump himself, he has said a lot of things. He usually does say a lot of things. You never. I mean,
Yeah.
Truthfully, some days I wonder who is truly senile between him and former President Biden when they actually speak about it. I mean, I've tried to listen to some of his talks. He is not a coherent man in any measure. But he has already made strides towards such a thing. One of his recent policies banned aid to any foreign government, with the sole exceptions of Egypt and Israel. This was a unfortunately big win as far as Israel saw. It is the one exception here, and it is going to keep getting mountains of money in military funding. At the same time, what literal restrictions there were on arms transported and given to Israel were also recently removed by Trump. When fighting will be resumed, and it is highly likely that fighting will be resumed, it is very likely that it may be worse due to Trump's outspoken support.
So we've seen recently that Trump appears to be trying to make good on many of the outrageous claims or outrageous promises that even I didn't think that he'd be able to try and do anything about. So if the administration decides that they're going to, the assuming, of course, this is making a few assumptions, assuming that the peace doesn't hold and Trump finally tells the Netanyahu government, look, just clear them out, we'll find a place to stick them. Do you think if that starts to go forward, do you think there's any chance for peace in the region?
No, quite blatantly. I've had talks about this with classmates even. With these sorts of politics, it's sometimes very hard to get people to understand the underlying reasons behind the conflict. Hamas is not the sole proprietor here. They have agency. They made the decision. They went for it. But there are driving forces behind it. Driving forces such as the funding from Iran, the funding from the Bibi government. Bibi himself has said that Hamas is an asset and has directly funded them in order to weaken the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And in addition to that, there is the utter pain of Gaza. People are living in an open air prison after the horrible crime against humanity that was the Nakba, being constantly harassed and further subjugated by Israeli forces. If you were to remove them from their land, it could only get worse as far as I am concerned. If you wipe out the entire Hamas, you will not prevent the 7th October from happening again. You might just be the primary cause behind an even worse 7th of October occurring a second time. The only way to achieve peace is via peaceful measures. It is via recognition of the Palestinian people, giving them proper space, removing these apartheid laws, and reaching some sort of equity and equal agreement. It worked.
Sure.
No, it's fine.
So one last thing on Trump and the deal before I want to move on to Netanyahu's position and how and why he's kind of stuck on things. So he has actually gotten some credit even from the Biden administration for participating in this deal. Apparently, he sent a Gulf buddy who had grown up in the region down to assist. And shortly after the deal was signed, as you pointed out, Trump removed all of the limitations that the U.S. had put on weapons. Now, the U.S., under the Biden administration, the U.S. was not really doing anything to stop the genocide. What we were doing was Bibi's a little out of control, so we're gonna dial it back a little bit. and try to slow Netanyahu down. And Biden had his famous interview. Was, I told him to stop, and he didn't stop. But we did scale back what we were willing to give them. Trump has now overturned that. Do you think that was a part of how this deal was able to happen so quickly, and Netanyahu was willing to say, okay, we'll agree to this peace treaty because as soon as it's over, we can engage and we can start in right on say the West Bank now with all of the weapons that they can now buy and they are accruing during this peace?
It definitely might be one of the factors. Again, there is still the factor of the policy trade, the external weight, and everything else. Yes, that is very accurate. He is very much a neo-Nazi. What was I saying? Sorry, I do have very terrible ADHD. It could definitely be one of the factors behind it. I believe Saddam Hussein once said that to be a politician is to say one thing while meaning another and doing a completely separate third thing. Within Trump, I refuse to give him any sort of credit for what happened. I know that a lot of the Trumpist, campaign and ideology is built on taking credit for a lot of Biden's and Obama's policies and economic economic maneuvering. Just like with this, we can see that he is taking credit for one thing while doing something completely different that is completely in opposition to it. It might definitely be one of the things behind the treaty. We can take a bit of a break in order to quickly refuel, get even better equipment, and come back stronger. There's not much I can say about it without getting into purely speculationist territory.
Well, yeah, the fact that he lifted the restrictions so soon after the peace deal suggested to me strongly that it was. I didn't think anybody was going to get a peace deal. We then got one, and it appears to be holding. Now he's lost. What's his name?
Bin Laden?
No.
Not Bin Laden. He's been dead for years.
Yeah, from the cabinet who resigned.
Ben-Gvir.
Ben-Gvir.
I would very much like to say that is not a big loss as far as I care. Thank God. On the other hand, there are definitely implications. Well,
and the fact that he's managed to keep anybody else suggests to me that he's told them, look, nobody wants this deal, at least, again, nobody in the government, nobody wants this deal, but if we take it, we remove the weapons restrictions, we're going to remove, and Trump has already told Benjamin Netanyahu, you go do whatever you want. This is what he told him last time. He's like, just go. So if he's gotten that kind of just, the U.S. is going to let you do whatever you want, it seems to me that would keep his far-right coalition maybe together long enough that, he just, and this gives Trump the only thing he wants. Trump wants one thing out of this, which is to be able to say, he did it, he got a win, and he's the man, and as soon as nobody's looking, just let Benjamin Netanyahu completely off the leash and he goes off onto something else.
Yes, so nobody really wants to be the guy who said, oh, I refuse to let... Okay, backtracking. Most people are sane enough to realize that if they directly go out against the deal, they would lose a massive amount of support. Ben-Gvir and his party, which, by the way, is named Jewish Power, 𝐒𝐚𝐦𝐚𝐫, the Jewish Power. It is that blatantly uh, it's that blatant. He is a leader of a very far right extremist section of the population. I am sorry, I'm struggling to find the words right now. A lot of stuff on the tip of the tongue that you just can't think of.
Like
but
a national,
it's
clearly a nationalist party.
Most of the parties in Israel are. We have, I mean, you've heard some of these names: the religious Zionists, the Jewish power. It is frankly ridiculous sometimes. Ben-Gvir himself is the leader of a group of extremists who believe that the hostages are already lost, and that the only reasonable escalation is to completely eliminate not just all Palestinians but all Arabs.
Jesus.
By leaving the government as he did, he manages to further entrench himself and make himself far more desirable to these extremists. And basically, it's actually very similar to a move Netanyahu himself did, which let him take control of the party he currently leads, which has been running the country for close to 20, 30 years now. In that same manner, by leaving, Ben-Gvir is showing that he is true to his principles. He truly believes in his genocidal, ethno-nationalist beliefs, and it makes him that much more of a bright choice for his ethno-nationalist supporters. The rest of them, for example, Smotrich's own party, can see that he's campaigning towards their own interests, which is, of course, religious people not being recruited and being allowed to leave off of government subsidies and be tried under more lenient punishments for domestic abuse and such things.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to be seen more favorably because he worked towards those ends. It's unfortunately different interests that in the end aren't as relevant towards the release of the hostages. Most people can see that it is probably a bad idea to strike out against that. Most can also probably see that the country is very close to a collapse. One of the recent things that has happened this year is our VAT getting even worse. How much is the VAT in America right now?
The
sales tax.
We don't have a VAT.
Oh, you're right. I forgot. You have very weird economics.
Yeah, yeah.
I would not comprehend having to do tax calculations on everything I purchase.
I forget how many tax laws we now have, or tax codes, but as Andrew probably knows, but as I recall, it's like 300,000 lines of tax code in the U.S.
God. Well, as well as well known, at least it is well known within the country, that we have one of, if not the highest sales tax in the world. It was 17%. It is now 18%. The economy suffered vastly under the war. Less Palestinians means less Palestinians means means less cheap laborers who can be brought in for things such as construction. More war means a lot of people spending most of their time in reserves, getting paid by taxes rather than working and contributing to the economy. Massive amounts of money have to be funneled back into the military, more so than usually, etc., etc. From all from all perspectives, aside from that the government is now under threat of finally falling apart, it is blatant to see that it is very blatant to see that this war was not good for the economy, for safety, for anything.
All right. So I'd like to. We got some super chats. Thank you guys very much. I'd like to hit those. Before I do that,
you hit those real quick.
Oh yes, please.
You were wondering about the tax code in the United States.
Yes, I was.
It's almost 7,000 pages.
Oh dear.
And if you include the official interpretations, then it goes to over 75,000 pages.
Well, and I did also look it up. So the King James version of the Bible has 780,000 words. Number of words, King James version, 780,000. The U.S. tax code has more than 1 million words.
My God, you might sue. You might even have more words than the Journey to the West by this point, or the Mahabharata.
It's and we've talked a lot about how to try to fix it and all. It's so big that, and this is something that Europeans don't really think about too much, is having an accountant or anything like this. Like in the U.S., it's very difficult to get your taxes done accurately without hiring a professional. And there are people who make.
Yeah, we just have them automatically done by our workplace.
Yeah, we actually
and the government. The government sends me a bill every month for property tax. My income tax is deducted automatically, and our sales tax is included in all prices.
There is a troll in the chat. That almost as many words as Nick speaks each episode line was completely unwarranted, not funny, and over the top. I'm just saying. Blonde Bombsheller, $20. A great stream, Nick and his Andering. Thank you, Kafir. Thank you, Blonde Bombsheller, for your continued support. We talk about a lot of very difficult topics. This episode, I have zero doubt, is going to get limited monetization or demonetized. So it's only the super chats and donations that really keep the lights on here. And we do often do we'll donate some of them to charity and stuff like that too. So it really helps. We appreciate it. Thank you very much for your continued support. Dunk on You, also a $20 super chat. Thank you, sir. You've been supporting us for a while. It's always nice to see you in the live chat. Thank you so much for helping. Said late but listening closely. Also, Dunk on You gifted 5 memberships to In Time Independent News. Thank you very much. Those memberships hope will be enjoyed, and look forward to seeing who sticks around. Also, don't forget to join us on the Discord where we're covering this, and we're like I said, we're entering a new phase of news, I think, with Donald Trump, and we'll be discussing that on the Discord and how we're going to proceed to try to give you the best insight possible without having to have an entire U.S. tax code worth of words. Mouty. All right, so thank you very much for that. And hold on a sec. Yep. All right. Perfect. So moving forward, we've talked about this last time, which is that Benjamin Netanyahu has a very serious problem on his hands. He's now got several very serious problems on his hands. The biggest problem is that he's, if I recall correctly, already been indicted on bribery and various other criminal charges. But because he is the head of the government, so long as he remains that way, they can't prosecute him or throw him in jail. So
yes, new laws, by the way, I will point out, as we have had a prime minister tried and jailed, fined on corruption charges before. Said prime minister had praised the government for charging him, by the way, and not discriminating. These are all very new laws that protect Bibi from being tried against.
So, yeah, and that's the number of lives that law has probably cost, I would imagine, is quite high, because it's made him a hostage to anybody who can get him thrown in jail simply by leaving his coalition, which is this, the Israel Power group, the smaller far right group. So Sorry, was that accurate or inaccurate, or?
So right now, but with Ben Gvir's abandoning of the government, Bibi's majority, he lost 3 seats. The entire government is held with popsicle sticks and old chewed gum and tape. It is not in a good state right now. Currently, there is also Shas, who is the Haredi Orthodox Jewish party, also threatening to leave if the conscription law that will conscript religious Jews will be signed. If that happens, he will lose his majority and his government will fall apart. It is mainly because he did that policy trade with Smotrich's government. With Smotrich's party, I feel that he managed to avoid the government completely falling apart in this single moment.
Do you think the government, how long do you think he can maintain this? He obviously can't maintain this forever. He's also, and actually before we get into that, he just had his, what is it? He's been diagnosed with cancer, and I think he just had, what was the surgery? I can't believe I had it written down and I've already spaced it. He had his prostate removed. It was cancerous. I don't think they know whether or not it had metastasized, but he also recently had to have surgery to have a pacemaker installed. He was supposed to show up to court. He said he was too sick to go to court, but that begs the question, if you're too sick to go to court, how can you claim that you're well enough to run a country? So how long do you think he can keep this up at this point?
How do I say this? Let's search something up. Bibi is very old. He would be just around Trump, and I believe would be just around Trump and Biden's own age. He is 79. Yes.
Okay.
79. He is, 75. He's 75 years old. He is, his health declining by this point is not surprising. It is inevitable. How long he can cling on to power is something that I genuinely cannot tell you, because I am frankly surprised it has been as long as it has been. One of the things that or just before this government, two parties had actually joined forces. Two parties from opposite political ends, by the way, from the left and the right, had formed a coalition to get a majority of votes to become interim prime ministers in order to basically shove Bibi out of the government. And he still managed to worm his way back in. He stole the seat of power via a hellishly precarious series of treaties, which are now beginning to collapse in on themselves and bite him in the ass. How it is impossible to know how long he will be able to keep this up, because it is a miracle he's been able to keep it up as long as it has as is. Personally, I give it maybe half a year if the treaty holds, maybe half a year. If it doesn't, probably longer.
So let's assume for a second that his health holds out, but the government collapses. What happens at that point, in your view?
I do not see Bibi managing to win another election. Bibi is a cult of personality, much in the way Trump is. Many would say that Bibi is the only person capable of dealing with the threat, the only person capable of running the country. Many of these illusions have since been shattered by his handling of the war in this situation. Much of his power base has left him, either because they think that the hostages should have been kept sooner, or in search of perceived stronger and more how do I say this? More extreme avenues, such as Smotrich or Ben-Gvir. He might still win. I cannot know. Again, he is a massive cult of personality. I do not believe that he will. It will be a massive struggle between the left and the right, as the left has managed to gain a lot of traction. But at the same time, the 7th of October has managed to radicalize many people who were previously left.
So it's a toss-up, it sounds like you're saying, in your view, as to whether or not there would be... And maybe started out a little, he was on the right, but he didn't, he got pulled to the far right so that he could stay in power.
Yes. So, it's basically been a joke in the country for years that the people who were actually in charge were Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. They were basically puppeting him behind the scenes, is the jokes. I do believe that he himself is also an extremist nut job, but it is a toss-up after he is gone, whether we will lean more left or even worse right.
All right. So, and that's a question we've been asking because we also follow Ukraine and Russia a lot, and people sort of assume that as soon as Putin is gone, he will be replaced by someone better, and that anyone's better than him. No, there are a number of people very close to him who are genuinely worse and think of him as a nice, soft cuddle doll.
Think of it like this. Even if Trump is gone, you still land the chance of getting around DeSantis.
Exactly. Yes. That's it. That's perfect analogy. I'm not even going to. That is absolutely right. I actually thought it was going to be DeSantis. Xander,
I'm very glad it was not.
The whole world. Well, I was going to say the whole world breathed a sigh of relief, but Trump has just been.
Yeah, I was going to say when it comes between those two, I think if I had to choose one of them, I would choose DeSantis because he at least has some principles. I don't believe Trump has any.
Yeah, but
the way I see it, Trump might not have any principles, but the principles that Ron DeSantis does hold are blatantly villainous.
Well, and the problem is DeSantis isn't a smart guy, but he's smarter than Trump, and he has a better means of I think. Well, this time around, Trump is actually showing himself to be reasonably adept at hiring people and putting people around him.
I'm not sure I would call hiring Elon Musk reasonably adept at anything.
No, but he's been getting what he wants a lot more. Last time, he didn't bother to try to fill any of these positions. It was all done sort of at the... He thought the position of president was solely ceremonial. And now that he's realized, A, that he does have some responsibilities, but B, far more importantly, he actually has some power. If he has sycophants all around him, he has taken advantage to that with greater success than I had anticipated. The fact that Elon Musk is willing to put that kind of money into the campaign, the fact that that's a major success. Elon Musk has been a huge success for Trump, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah. I forget have I asked Xander if there was any final thoughts that you had. Sorry, I got a DM and those throw me.
Oh yeah. I guess my question would be if any of the people who are either currently watching it or will rewatch it, shout out to the replay crew, and they want to try and help in some way, something moves them to want to try and help. Is there anything they can do to help, and or what would be the best thing they could do to try and help?
I did not come prepared enough for this. There are an innumerable amount of charities that are pro-Palestinian and are helping with reparations for Palestinian people. Any measure of them, any measure of money funneled and helping those who have been most heavily impacted by this war. I believe the latest casualty count is 64,000 dead. It will be helpful. Donating to any of these Palestinian causes. There are causes fighting the colonization of the West Bank and fighting for recognition. And these are probably a lot harder to find, but also fighting for the recognition of unrecognized Bedouin villages. I also shared in the last video, the previous video I was on has in its description links to a political movement I am affiliated with. I do not represent them during my time here, but I am affiliated with them. They are leftist, pro-Palestinian, and anti-right. I also shared a link to a project that is basically a think tank that is geared towards finding a proper solution for this region, as well as a political party that I am also affiliated with and I'm a part of that is also leftist and anti-right. In general, anything that helps Palestinians is good enough as far as I care. It is blatantly terrible, the things that have gone down there.
I will add those back in. I had thought I had done it. I obviously did not, but those links we'll make sure that they're copied over from your first visit over here, because I think those are still good organizations. We are gonna do a raid. We're gonna pass you guys on to someone else. We're still kind of deciding who based on any number of factors. So it could be a surprise who you get. Yes.
I would like, before the raid goes, if anyone in the chat has any further questions, I could answer after, I don't know, 5 minutes, 5 minutes fire round.
Absolutely.
Rapid fire.
We can, we can see, and that'll give us a little time to sort the raid out anyway. So if anyone has any questions for Kafir before we get going, but I will also say, at least right now, does P equal NP, and can you prove it? Sinister Porpoise, please don't answer that question. Don't go within
I do not believe I understand this. I don't believe I understand this question.
Thank God that you do not understand that question. It's an inside joke. It wasn't. It's an inside joke. And Sinister Porpoise followed up with, "I have no serious questions." But I will take a moment to thank once again Dunk on You and Blonde Bombscheller for your super chats. Dunk on You, also thank you for the gifted memberships. We really appreciate it. I would like to thank the mods. Remind everyone, come join us on the Discord, and you can keep up with the news as we are doing it, and see sort of how we do our breaking news and how we operate and do all the things that we do. Thank you, Zandering, for being here. Thank you for not lighting yourself on fire while being in Los Angeles.
I'm trying to stay well clear of the recovery efforts.
I keep forgetting, and you and I had this conversation. You've been on the road so much. It's like every now and then you tell me what you've seen, and I was just like, "Oh my God, how'd you see that?" I was like, "Well, that stuff happens on America's freeways all the time. It's just most people aren't on the road 24/7." So you're basically on the road so much, you've just about seen it all. So, except for a tornado, which I know you're dying to see.
Yes, I have yet to see an actual tornado in person. I'm a little sad about that. I have been very close to them, within a mile, twice. One time I was driving down the road, and the trees along the side were being, whipped back and forth, and I couldn't actually see it. And I found out later that I drove right next to the tornado when I got to the truck stop and realized they had completely shut down the road that I was driving on, and I had no idea. And the other one, I was in just outside of Birmingham, Alabama. It was in Pelham, Alabama. There was a very large tornado, probably 8 years ago now, that went right through the middle of Birmingham, Alabama, tore a big old swath right through the middle of town. That one had several other smaller tornadoes that were near it, and it passed within a mile of where I was sleeping at a shipper getting ready to load the next morning, and it didn't even wake me up.
Dang. I do see that there aren't, I don't see if there are any further questions. If there are, do remember, I am always available on Discord at 𝐍𝐤𝐜𝐸. Again, you can always ask me further questions in Discord. I am in the In Time Discord. And thank you all for being great hosts this night too.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much for Zendrick, please.
You were going to say the exact same thing I was going to say, so
okay.
Just finish it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back. Well, I'll be honest with you. I look forward to never needing to see you again, because that means that this problem will be over. But I don't think that's going to happen. So.
Same on my side, and I will be reluctantly glad to be back whenever it is needed.
I think we should modify that slightly.
Please.
Since I have started with the super chat income that has come in, I have begun my my gender studies career, college degree, and so I've one of the classes that I'm taking is on how to say blunt things nicely. That's not the name of the course, but that's essentially what it is.
Okay.
So I'd like to rephrase what you said there, just slightly.
Please.
We are looking forward to having you back to cover a topic that is not this, because this will have been solved equitably.
I hope that is a realistic future, and I hope to I hope to be back here to. We did say we would meet again, and I completely forgot about it until Trump was elected, and I was like, this has a lot of international implications. People in the US often underestimate how much influence their decisions have outside of it.
Yep.
Thank you all for being great hosts. I very much enjoyed my time here again.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone, and we will see you on Thursday for Downtime. And again, we'll be doing a new show, Keeping Up with Trump, and we'll keep an eye out on the Discord. We'll let you know. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Great night.